Don't be shy.
This is a different campaign than 90% of the people starting out.
Totally.
So you started making music as a kid,
Mm-hmm.
and that didn't work out?
Well, when I started making music, obviously you're inspired by the artists that you look up to and that were making music that you can feel that you relate to. And when I started as a kid, despite like having a really strong understanding of like, I felt like of the industry and sort of the steps that were needing to be taken to get there, it was always way harder for me to put myself into a third person perspective of like, how do I manage my own self as an artist to that point? I always felt like I could come up with really good ideas in terms of like people that were around me or people that I had access to in terms of advising what I thought they should do. But it's really hard to put yourself into a third person perspective and sort of manage your own situation because it's hard to take your own emotional feelings out of it. You know, a lot of artists talk about how when you get started and you get going, you honestly can't get to a point where you make good art unless you were at least at one point you had a delusional belief in yourself where like you thought it was dope even though like it obviously couldn't have been. Because when I started, I just like don't feel that the art that I was making was strong enough to get the attention that it needed, and more importantly, I didn't have the resources to execute on any of the ideas that I had. And like, don't get me wrong, I still don't have the resources to execute on most of my ideas, but I have more resources than I did 7 years ago.
It's either because they're insecure or they're jealous or they feel threatened by you. What motivates me is the idea that I can empower people to follow their passion and like be inspired and hopefully have a really good time doing so. You don't want to be 50 years old and looking back on your life wishing you did something. And so if there's something that you really want to do or dreams that you have or places you want to go, then do it. Because you only live once, and you better follow that because you don't want to be 50 looking back and regretting what you've done with your life.
Explain the logo.
So the reason why I chose an elephant was because, first of all, animals are a great thing to use for branding. Everyone's watching nature shows or seen cartoons, like whatever, obvious reasons. So animals are good for branding. That blunt got me. Elephants never forget. They're intellectual animals. They roll in a herd, and I consider my fan base like my herd, you know. That's the people that it's growing as you grow, you know, as the animals have more, you know, children, they add more to their herd. And I see that the same way in regards to, you know, growing your fan base, because, you know, your fan base ultimately are the people that have the strongest fan base, and also the type of fan base I want and the type of fan that I am. Is you want to be connected with the person that you're a fan of. It's not about just the width. In fact, it's not about the width. The width will happen if it's meant to happen, but it's about the depth and the impact that you have with each person. And so elephants just seemed like a really good animal to represent the things that I think about my brand, which is honest, intelligent, creative, and relatable. There's something relatable about an elephant. You know, we've all remembered Dumbo from when we were kids, you know. Everybody has some kind of connection to animals for the most part. For me, it just made sense, and the brand just felt like it became full circle when we tied in the Dumbo character, because it feels reminiscent of the 90s in some weird way, which is on brand with how, you know, I feel. Don't get me wrong, like, I'm trying to make music that's gonna be listened to by all age groups. I've been, you know, making music that sounds increasingly more and more modern, so to speak, but ultimately I'm not trying to follow a trend. I'm trying to follow my intuition and what I gravitate towards with music. And so some of that, you know, is reminiscent of the music that I grew up on, and I just feel like this is the right way to tie in everything, and that's the reason why we chose an elephant, and I'm glad that we did. So the basis of this campaign kind of started being created around, I want to say, April or May of 2019. When it really so I started making music again at the beginning of 2018, very quietly. I mean, obviously this whole time has been quietly. I mean, I still have no records out. I scrubbed the internet and all the stuff that I dropped when I was younger. Like, I'm a ghost right now. I don't exist on the internet. But, you know, I started making music at the beginning of 2018. After that, by about June is when I started making content that I actually felt good about again. The first 6 months I was just making music. Most of all those songs never got kept. I recorded a bunch of them. We're not gonna talk about those. In June, I made Wikipedia, which was the first song of this campaign that like we still have now. And we started shooting videos at that point, you know. One of the things that you realize as a brand though, or as an artist, which I mean, those are one in itself, if you're looking at it from the right perspective, I believe, but one of the things that you don't realize, or maybe you do realize, but you need to make sure you're aware of it while growing, is that you are your product, you know? So when you're selling anything else, just like whether it's life insurance, which is something that's intangible, or you're selling something physical like you're in retail, it's hard to do that when you don't feel that you look the part or you don't match your brand and your image. So the way I look now is something that was curated over the course of that time. And one of the two hardest things for me to have put together over this course of this time was my logo and like what you want in like a short snapshot image, how you want that to represent your brand. And then the other thing is, you know, the way that I want me to look. And we shot all these videos along the way, and it was huge practice, and it taught me a lot because the concept of these oneers that we're shooting, which, you know, provides us with some type of like visual branding in the sense that there's some consistency from video to video, and it challenges us to be able to have to be creative from each video. It also shows that I can perform well because there's no like, it's a one long thing, you know, you had to execute on it. But going through this process taught us a lot about how to do one. Specifically for me, I didn't, you know, do that much video work when I was younger. I always knew that it was the key piece that was gonna be the reason what would eventually help me create, you know, a following, hopefully. In order to do so, you need to have visual content for people to connect to. I always knew that, you know. The oneers is a really good way for us to execute on that. And while it's, you know, one of the things I realized recently is like I was looking through all these videos and I'm thinking, these videos are great. My performance is good. The outfits look good. The video work is great. But, you know, I just don't look like I do now. I've shot 17 videos since we started this campaign in the last 18 months, maybe even 18, I think, including some of the other stuff. We've recently cut it down to 8 videos. You know, I'm cutting 10 of the videos. And it's hard to do that when you've invested time and money and put yourself into a product. But the most important thing in the end is that everything feels the same and is cohesive. And so the trust of your fans and the trust of your customers, whether it's a product or of course something that you're building a following with, is more important than the money that we spent and the energy we put into those videos. The full videos will never see the light of day, but I mean, at least now I look like a really talented homeless person. So that part's fire. L'chaim.